Chapter 5 marks the culmination of your research process. This is where you discuss and report on your finding. You show how the empirical findings prove or disprove your hypothesis or answer your research question. Prof. Henning, Rifilwe, and Fikile discuss some things that they realize at the end of their studies. These studies might not be in your field of interest, but through these discussions, you might find some guidelines in the writing of Chapter 5.
Hello, Rifilwe. I'm so glad I'm talking to you today. I want to know a little bit more about your study. Not the whole study, just what was it that you studied?
I studied student teachers at a teaching school.
Stop a minute. What is a teaching school?
Oh, it's a first of its kind in South Africa, Prof. Gogo. It's actually a laboratory. You see, when you go to the hospital, they'll take the doctors that are in training and they put them in the wards. Now, that's what's happening at my school. Student teachers come and they sit with us and they observe us when we work. Then they take good teaching practice. So as teachers, we need to model that good teaching practice.
Okay, so you are a teacher at such a school. And
I'm a
from
teacher at
what
a
I
school.
read, you studied those student teachers.
Yeah, they made me curious. Curious in a sense that when they come, mostly they've got the theory of what they just read. Then when they come and look at us, and many a time is that, ma'am, why did you do that? Why are you doing this? Why must I use this chart instead of this chart? But now, when they're busy with whatever, because when you teach, you can't teach without having something that will help you to make the learners understand. Those, we call them teaching tools.
So you studied the students, and you studied something about them learning from you and other teachers at this laboratory school.
Yes.
And you wanted to focus on something that has to do with teaching tools. What is a teaching tool?
A teaching tool is an aid that assists you to explain what you want to see. The teaching school is a primary school. So many a times in a primary school, if you want to bring a concept around, you take something that will resemble what you're going to talk about, then you show your learners.
You've just said something which has always interested me, and that is your teaching concepts. Now, you wanted to see, if I understood you correctly, how these student teachers learn with you and others to make teaching tools,
Yes.
to teach concepts while you are mentoring them.
Yes.
And then you went and studied that.
Yes.
And what did you find?
Oops. If you have something that's helping you to achieve something, and you end up not achieving what you want to achieve, that means that whatever is it that you're using, in our case, the teaching tools, they didn't work out the way they were supposed to, because now the problem can be maybe the teacher didn't explain it well, or many a times what I've experienced is that when they have a teaching aid, they just put on the table and not give clear instruction. And at the end of the day, if something is just there next to me and somebody's talking, I'll take it and do what I want to do it with me. Somebody needs to give me a clear instruction and tell me and guide me after the instruction that this is where we are now, so that at the end of the day, it's not about them playing with, it's them playing to learn with it.
Okay.
Yes.
So they didn't apply the tools
They
well,
didn't apply the tools well.
although they made nice ones.
They were very, very attractive, big enough, durable, but when the kids are supposed to engage, they didn't have enough knowledge. That's what, and there's, when you're working with kids, it's very easy for you to detect if they are not with you or not. Once they start playing, then you see that, they are not here. Because once they understand what you're saying and they are at the same level with you, they're just going to keep their eyes glued to you.
Okay, so now when I started reading your work, I noticed that you used a specific model. But then I was a bit perplexed because I was a bit worried. What sort of model can one use to think about this type of study? So you came across something by who wrote it?
I came across two authors that worked on tools, and from them I copied a model that I thought would be appropriate for what I want to bring across. Because as much as when I say I teach young learners, I use something that is an example. So for them, I use the Thomas and Brown model, which speaks to the students thinking about what they want to do. Then after thinking about what they want to do, then they use their own hands to do it. But now, at the third level, whatever is it that they did, that they used to like work out, it must be used by the learners. And when it gets to the learner, it's something that they play with.
Okay. Ah, now I understand. You were talking about the model that, and I'm going to quote the Latin now. You check me. Homo sapiens. That's the thinking human, the sentient human being.
Yes.
And Homo faber, which is the
Making.
the person who makes things
Yes.
to create.
Uh-huh.
And Homo
The-
playfulness, Homo
the rest-
ludens.
the last one. Yeah,
Okay, so you
playful,
use
yeah.
that model, but you know, I always struggle, especially when I work with new students, not mature students, really young students who have not experienced life. They usually don't know what a model is. How would you describe to someone in Sesotho what a model is?
Nka mo tlhalosetsa ka hore ha o batla ho etsa ntho o sa e tsebeng, o hloka setshwantsho.
Okay, translate that back for me in
If you want
English.
to do something or you want to talk about something that you don't know, you need something to represent it.
So a model is a representation
Yeah.
of an idea as well.
Or of an idea as well.
I get
Because
it.
if somebody is going to come to me and say, Homo faber, what's that? But if you come to me and say somebody that's making something and you got a picture maybe, or you got two kids trying to make out a doll or something, then I say, oh, it's make. Ke etsa ka Sesotho. Mara ke e bone, ke e tshwantshitse pele. Yeah.
A model is something that is made. Now, when I think of a model, I always think of people who make a model of a basket to teach other people how to make baskets. Does that make any sense to
A
you?
representation.
A representation.
Yes.
So they've got this idea in their head, baskets look like this.
Yes.
So when I make a basket, I will have to have certain characteristics. Now we come to the difficult part for me. How does one use a model when you want to interpret your findings? You said the students, the findings were that they didn't really use the nice things they made. So how do you use a model to interpret that? It's difficult.
When I look at it, Prof, I thought as much as I saw what I saw, but how do I know that what I'm thinking is true? So I needed to refer back to somebody else that did this before so that I can know that I'm on the right track. And when I explain to them, they'll understand it better because it's not just me that's saying, come, sit here, let's do this. But now somebody did it before
So you interpreted your findings with the help of this model.
with the help of that model.
So how much did these students think? How much of Homo sapiens was there?
They do. They really think out of the box. The problem is, or rather, let me say it's a challenge to them, that many a times, as much as they know what to do, they don't do it the way it's supposed to be done.
So they can make things,
They
can
can
think,
make things.
they
yeah.
do it creatively, thinkingly, but they can't apply it.
The application is just,
Not there.
yeah, we really need to work on that.
Okay, so you have some powerful findings. Actually, also scary findings. But you found something else which we haven't talked about. Let me think. Yeah. You said that in general, according to your thinking and the facts that you had, the teachers buy too many ready-made things.
Yes.
So what's the problem with that? I mean, when I get to schools, I see charts all over. I see playthings. I
Even
see
in the
blocks.
cupboards, there's a lot of stuff packed in the cupboards.
A lot of stuff packed in the
Yeah,
cupboards,
yes.
not taken out.
Remember that when I get to a school, I'll prefer this, or maybe somebody will come and say, this is what I'm selling. Then I say, I request that from my LTSM coordinator, can we please purchase this? That's me as an individual. I use it. I get promoted, I move to the next school. Then somebody else comes and say, what is this thing? Because nobody mediated that thing to her. And say, I'm leaving this one. Can you please buy this one for me? Then you open the cupboard. There's a lot of stuff in the cupboard. That
So
you
what
can't
you're saying is
use.
your second finding was that commercial products are sold but not used as
But not used,
creatively.
yes, and
Not too much
effectively
human
so, yeah.
homo ludens in all of this.
Yes, because now the students that went to other schools, when they come back and
Okay.
say, ma'am, I saw this in the cupboard, what is it?
Okay, and then you had another finding which really intrigued me. You know, you sort of 21st century stuff. You said that classrooms should be maker spaces where children make things themselves, never mind the teacher making or buying them,
Yes.
making them to teach themselves and each other. That's what we did when we were children, long, long ago. So we're back to that.
Yeah.
Does it suit you?
We back to basics. There's no other way. Teaching, it's got everything to do with engaging. So if I'm going to stand there and read something out and expect my learners to understand, then sometimes it doesn't work.
Okay. So that's the third thing you found, and you're writing this up. So in terms of children making things themselves, to teach themselves and to teach each other.
Yeah, and
So
they don't really have to go by. They can just walk out of the classroom. There's your leaves, there's your stones, there's your twigs.
and
They
that's
can bring them to class.
and you're still using that model to interpret it. You're still saying for kids to learn playfully, to learn through play, let them play.
Let them play. And
So
using
homo
things,
ludens is
yes.
there. Your model is working, sister. That's what I thought when I read your work. And
And-
that article of yours in the South African Journal of Childhood Education is spot on. Thank you for telling me all of this. Just one last thing. If you have to give from your study a recommendation for us as people who work at universities, because we get very disengaged with what goes on the ground. We read the books, we write, but we don't get into classrooms often enough. What was one of your recommendations for research?
I'm thinking that we need to go and explore other schools because, like I explained when we started, that our school is the first of its kind in South Africa.
So it's quite unique.
It's very unique, and I think we really need to go out there and touch more lives than we're doing now.
That's now for research. And for
Yes,
practice, what would you advise teachers to do at the end? I read what you said. It's good. If you don't remember, you said don't buy so much stuff.
I remember that one. We don't buy too much stuff. I think that will go to, it's not only us in the townships that have learners that are young. We also have kids that are very far away from where they can purchase. Now, what about those teachers? So we need to teach our teachers that when they get to schools like that, they can make their own.
So you and I, at this very moment, in your interpretation as I read it, we are saying, Humo Faber, give me a 5. I think that's the way to go. Make things yourselves, because the making human being is the thinking human being. And if you can do it playfully, you don't need all
Why
of this
not?
other
And if
stuff.
you're doing it playfully, then you triggering people's interest, the ones that you come with. Because when we get to teaching, we're going to teach the learners. And if they're not excited about something, it's obvious when I'm not excited about something, I'll sleep. And we don't want them to sleep. So they must have something that they'll use their hands, think.
So those are your recommendations. Now, in your chapter 5, you also, when you concluded, you said there was a bit of a limitation in your study. You would have liked to do something more, something different.
Oh, I think it's quite a few things that I could have done. Like, for an example, chat to the lecturers.
The lecturers?
Yes.
Which ones are these then?
At
At the
methodology
university?
one, yes, the methodology lecturers at the university. Because I think at some point, me as a mentor teacher and them needs to find a level ground.
Hello, Fikile.
Yeah, Prof.
You know, I read your work.
Is it?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to do this. I have to stay up to date.
Okay.
And you did a really nice study. You know, I'm not really in classrooms, so some of it I didn't understand.
Okay.
But one of the things that bothered me, can I ask you that? What bothered me?
Yeah.
You're a teacher, a mentor teacher, a head of department. Nogal. And and you are a researcher researching teachers in your school. Was that difficult? To study your own people around you because you studied the teachers?
It was quite difficult, Prof, you know, because I'm working with them. I'm doing a lot of developmental workshops with them, you know, and now having to study them, you know, and find things that I didn't want to find, it was quite a bit of a challenge for me. You know, but I needed to remove myself, though it was difficult, but I needed to remove myself because I wanted to basically validate my findings correctly so.
Okay, so were you able to get some distance between your results and the process and how you wrote it up? It must have been hard.
Yeah, it was hard, Prof. You know, but like I said, that I needed to remove myself.
Okay, so in the literature we refer to this. People talk about practitioner researcher. So you are researching your own practice. So it is a way of doing things, but it's not easy. So what was your actual research question in your study?
My research question was, how do the early grade teachers, and when I'm talking about the early grade teachers, I'm talking about the grade R and 1 teachers, how do they actually identify the learning difficulties with regards to mathematics? So my topic was more on, you know, the early grade teachers and children's difficulties with mathematics learning.
Okay, so for that you had to have quite a strong theoretical base, quite a strong research base in learning of mathematics. And you used some knowledge. Which knowledge did you use to help you to do this study?
I used the mathematical cognition, you know, using the model of Fritz, you know, where he speaks about the 5 levels with regards to your number sense.
You did a very difficult study.
Yeah.
And when I read parts of it, I was actually quite amazed at about how much distance you could create between yourself, your study, and your colleagues. But you did it. You found out something about the 4 teachers that you studied. You found that the teachers learned a lot of new stuff in this development program for mathematics teaching in the early grades. They learned a lot and they enjoyed it. And like with all development programs, everybody filled in a form to say, wonderful, we evaluate this. But they didn't change their practice. They knew all these new things, but you said they didn't change their practice much.
They didn't, Prof. You know, let me just talk about them, you know, the program that we did with them, with mathematics. Yes, they were all excited. And they thought that, you know what, they've got the grips of, of the whole thing, and they will be able to apply it, when they go into their classrooms and so forth. But when I was doing the observations, I could see that as much as they have planned based on, what they have learned, it was difficult for them to apply it in their classroom, because there's quite a lot of frustrations that comes, if you are in a classroom. There's different learners. It's not like in the actual workshop. In the actual workshop, they actually make it so easy for you, and one would think that when you go to class, things are just going to roll that way. But there's what we call how children learn that also needs to be involved into that. So when teachers are in their classroom, it was difficult for them now to apply that. They basically decided to revert back to what they have learned before, or something that they think that it will work much better for them. Taking into consideration that there's quite a lot of factors. Things like them covering the syllabus, the syllabi, covering the whole curriculum at a given time. So if learners are not moving as fast as, the curriculum demands them to, so teachers resort to doing things the old way. So it's quite difficult for them now to apply the new knowledge.
So when you had to interpret this finding, which is an important finding, because it doesn't help us very much to do all these development things.
Yeah.
People learn new things, but they can't apply them. So how did you interpret that? By the way, before we go on, when I say interpret in English, how would one say in isiZulu interpretation?
In isiZulu, you would say ukuchaza kabanzi. Ukuchaza kabanzi, it's like analyzing in depth. It's like in a simple English, it's like breaking it down, so that you can see each and every part of it. So at the end of the day, you are able to interpret it. So that is ukuchaza kabanzi ngesiZulu.
And the word for analyzing, would it be the same sort of word?
Yeah, they work basically together. So when one analyzes such, of course, you need to use correct theories and correct models.
Suitable theories.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
That will help you in coming up with the correct results at the end of the day.
You did the study, you interpreted the findings, you did an analysis which was really very clear. You had good data, and now you came to the end of your study and you talked about the limitations of your study, things that could have gone differently. Is there something there that you want to mention for me?
It was me being biased, because as their mentor teacher, I have done some developmental workshops with them. And like I've said previously, looking into their planning, I could see that they are planning as per our discussion or as per the results of the workshops. But now, when going to class and observing, how they execute their lessons, it was very difficult for me to now, say, what they wrote on the lesson plan, it's not actually what they were actually doing in the classroom. How is that? Because I know deep down that they understand this. And why is it so difficult for them now to apply it, in their teaching?
So your study is ending with a bigger question than it asked at the beginning.
What was the question?
You were saying at the end, how they can't apply it. I'm asking, why can't they apply it? At the beginning you said, I'm going to check how they apply it. It's really a difficult story to do a master's dissertation. Yeah. If you could do it differently, what would you do?
I'll definitely do it the same way, Prof. My sample being the grade 1 teachers as well as the grade R teachers, because my belief is that the foundation of mathematics understanding lies in these 2 grades, and we have to perfect that before they can proceed before the learners can actually proceed to grade 2 and other grades that follows after that. So it would definitely be the same teachers.
You wouldn't like to use more teachers?
No.
Why not?
Same. It's a continuation, basically. It will give me a clear, understanding. It will basically validate some of my findings, basically, as opposed to roping in new people, because that might change things, and I really don't want to step into that. Okay. Because my interest was now more on, with so much knowledge, with so much development, why is it difficult for them to apply the new knowledges?
So you would zoom into something.
I would zoom into that to say, why now is it difficult to integrate the new knowledge with the old?
Can I ask you another question? I know I've said it's the last one, but this intrigues me. If you have to write something to the policy people, what would you write based on your findings? You're making a recommendation for our Minister of Basic Education. What would you write to her?
Very interesting. The first thing, I think I've got something like 5 that are coming to my mind now. The first one, it will be giving teachers their autonomy in their classrooms so that they can then be able to apply their knowledge.
Are you telling me that you're thinking because they are so constricted by the curriculum and its pace that they couldn't benefit from this marvelous workshop series?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly my point.
Here are some important ideas to keep in mind when you write Chapter 5.
When you have completed the data analysis, you will have a set of results. These results can only be regarded as the final findings of your study once you have interpreted and discussed them. In a dissertation or thesis, this will typically become the basis of the last chapter. At this stage, students often get stuck. They ask what it means to interpret the results. The answer is quite simple. To interpret results, you delve into the meaning of it. You explain its significance. The framework you use to analyze the data will help you to interpret the results in depth. Rafiel Ware explained how she used Thomas and Brown's theory of human thinking, design and making, and human play. This was her analytical tool when she worked with her data. In the interpretation phase of her study, she used the same tool. Her analysis tool became her interpretation tool. You may find that despite having a workable plan for the research and implementing it well, your findings may still be limited, and you may end up with more questions than answers. You may not get the response to the research questions that you were expecting. You may in fact have further questions at the end of the study. That can be a good conclusion of a study. Fikile described how a year-long mathematics teaching program changed or did not change teachers' practice. Rafiel Ware found that pre-service teachers, despite having a mentor teacher in a teaching school, were unable to manipulate teaching tools effectively. These 2 examples show that you don't need positive results to have good findings. These are actually good results. It is the implication of the findings that are important. This is what forms the basis of your discussions. In a master study, a student is expected to show proficiency in the use of research methods. A PhD student is expected to make a worthwhile contribution to knowledge and practice. In educational settings, researchers often study aspects of their own practice. This type of research is known as practitioner research. When you do this type of research, there are questions of objectivity. But a researcher is never alone. Her subjectivity can be monitored by members of her own research community.
In the end, Chapter 5 could be compared to enjoying the fruits of your labor. You have planted the seeds for your study. You carefully read up and researched the ideal soil and condition of growth for your particular focus. In the harvesting process, you got your hands dirty and worked with your data. Now you are showing the products. It is a time of reporting, but also reflection. Doing postgraduate studies can often be a lonely process, and many students feel isolated. It is therefore important to be part of a research community. It is also useful to spend time with other students who are going through the same process. This normalizes fears and also allows for a time of collegiality. At the end, this affords opportunities for sharing stories and joint celebrations.
Yeah, finally, we are done with this dissertation. You know, what were your findings? What is it that was difficult when you were doing your studies?
You know what? Chapter 2. Yeah, I've seen them all, but chapter 2.
You saw flames.
Now, yeah, I know. I saw flames in chapter 2. Because now I would find this theories. Work along the line. I say, this is not what I'm looking for. Then I look for somebody else. And it just went on and on until I felt like, okay, chapter 1, yeah, we were there, but chapter 2, But now moving on, I think, because I really struggled with 2, when I got to 3 and the other ones, it was better.
It was better.
Yeah, because I ended up taking it and moving on with the other chapters and going back again, back and forth until, but it really gave me a challenge. I don't want to lie. But now that we're here today and we're talking about it, it's like I'm looking back and thinking, was that really me?
Yeah, I was also looking at my full dissertation and I'm thinking, is it me who wrote all of this thing, man? And where did I get the ideas? You know, I know it's from studying and all of that. But for me as well, it was chapter 2. Chapter 2 showed me flames, Shem. I even said to Prof, I really don't know what is it that you want now. Because I sent chapter 2 and, I quickly back and said, Fikile, you must add this. And she sent me more literature around that. And I'm like, wait again. And I can't do this now. I am tired. And I said to my sisters, you know what? I am not doing this anymore. I'm leaving this. I can't do it. It's clear that I can't do it. So I'm giving up.
Yeah, not for not that time. But now, I don't know. I'm just thinking, bring it on. I don't know what to say, but now I'm saying bring it on. But then, if you ask me this question too, like I say, okay, can we take this and put it there and let me carry on with my life?
Yeah, and how was it chapter 5?
You know what, chapter 5, it really turned out to be something that I didn't expect. As much as I was like collecting data, I would see that, okay, yeah, I see. But now looking at it and I'm like, okay, is this really what is supposed to happen? And I went through it again and said, Prof, just check this and go back. Let's go back to your chapter 3 and 4 and see if this makes sense. Because for me, it's like I got something that I didn't expect. Though the signs were there, but I thought, sometimes you sit and you say, yeah, this is what is going to happen. But when you check your data and you looking at your data and when you're looking at your raw data, you can, okay, maybe this is what's going to happen. But after you go through it over and over and over again, then the results are something else. Because I thought we went through this with the students. Now, how can I get these results? But now Prof said, if you think like that, go sit down and do it again. Then I thought, this is why it's not going to work for me. But for some strange reason, I went back and I just unpacked the whole thing and started again. But now here's the same data that I'm using and it came out exactly the same.
I think for me, it was the decoding part of it, when working with my data. I remember Prof said, now you must put it down so that you see it, man. You must put it down.
I remember that one and it came with a chart. And mine was so small. And I'm like, okay, Prof, can I go do this again?
And he said, Fikile, why is your chart so big?
So big and
I'm
mine
like,
is so small.
Or you must see your data.
Sure. Mine, it was just small pieces. And Prof is like, let's see yours. And I'm like, oh my God. Now, can I go and put this in a bigger thing. But now at the end of the day, you must still take it back.
Yeah.
But
And I never thought that I could come up with such great themes, from the codes that I came up with. Because it was too many codes, basically.
too many,
And I said, now how do I make this to be a theme? It was quite difficult for me until, we met with the prof. And she said, you know what? This is like your raw data. It's like this tomato. But if you look at it critically, it's like this green tomato. If you look at it critically, there's something that, you will find which will make it to be eatable, basically. When your assessor is basically looking at that, they can then be able to say, oh, ultimately, these are your findings. And which was something that was far-fetched for me. It was like, I'm not going to even see this. And I'm also looking at my age. Mudimak, I'm 44. Will I ever be finished with this thing? So, yeah, it was that, but quite exciting, And there's a lot that we've learned, man. Refilli, there's
but
a lot
which
that we've
part I
learned.
like? Where we did the references. And we were struggling with the references. Now we're calling the student to come and help.
Yeah, like I was saying, Refilli, that when we make a salad, it reminded me of us compiling, a whole full dissertation. That we just need to have right things in place, and how eventually we're going to mix, so that we can have good salad or a good dissertation at the end of the day. And I've also looked at how you've cut your cucumber and your peppers. They're nice and thin, suitable for this type of a salad that both of us are trying to make. So now we're going to mix our salads, having that idea in mind, of what is it that we need first so that our salad can come out nicely. Of course, I cannot just throw in my tomatoes first because they're watery. So what do you think we should throw first? What would be ideal? A bowl first. Which one comes first?
Let's throw this first in.
Okay. Okay, your peppers. Is it peppers and cucumber?
And cucumber.
Look at the sizes.
And the color.
Okay, and the color as well, it blends well.
Okay, then I put in the, what do I do? Yeah, borrow me this.
Okay.
Let me just put in this. Sorry. Right. Now, just a little bit.
Must I mix in the meantime?
Yeah.
Okay.
Then we put in our tomatoes. Nice.
And as you can see, that it's much better if you've got somebody that you're working with, because sometimes we don't see things the same way.
Same, yeah.
So if you do such a big study, you really need to have somebody, like Prof. Henning, who was our supervisor, guiding us through, so that we came up with what we actually eventually came up with. So what else?
Come to think about it. Remember the seats?
Yeah.
Yeah, while we started the whole thing,
Yeah.
the proposal.
Yeah,
And I was looking at it, it was like, this won't happen, it's so small.
Yeah.
How am I going to take out 5 chapters out of 7
this,
pages?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah, I
must we
think
go
we
now
can,
tomato?
Put in the tomato then.
Okay, let's put this there, and there we go. Yeah, but I think we're gonna need a little bit of some seasoning stuff, but it's fine, we'll get that in the house.
Okay.
So let's mix, and there we go. Look how beautiful it is. All the colors and yellow, everything in it, and
I think we can go and
I
enjoy
think we
it now.
can go and enjoy it now. Thank you so much.
And share it with Professor.
Yes, thank you.